19 things. Don't ask me why it's 19. I didn't set it out to be 19. It just turned out to be that. 19 things only the best coaches do well. So, reading from the slides I've got in front of me, they do not attempt to control the process, knowing it's not about them. I found an awful lot of coaches dominate, whether they know it or not, the whole process of so-called coaching. They tell stories that aren't necessary. They insert wisdom that isn't required. They unhelpfully overhelp, and they unhelpfully steer the attention away from the coaching client who I refuse to call a coachee. So it's not all about them. The best coaches know that. Also, the content, frequency, and especially the duration of contacts are always driven by the client. I don't like it when a coach says, so we've got an hour. So what do you think we can get done in whatever, typically an hour? I never do that. I'm not setting myself up to be perfect. I always say to those I work with in a coaching capacity, and this doesn't affect the pricing, by the way, we take as long as we need. I'm not doing anything else this morning or this afternoon. The focus is on you. That sometimes means, hey, it happens. It's a 2.5 hour duration. Hey, if it's needed, that's okay. And that's how it should be. I think coaches who are driven by the number of sessions, the duration of sessions, sometimes lose sight of the fact that it should always only be about the client, nothing else but that. So moving on to what is, for me, looking at this, the second slide, it says that there is a clear and agreed clarity of priority issues to work upon before each session. There is a clear and agreed clarity of priority issues to work upon before each session. In other words, it's contracting. There's nothing worse, I think, than a coach saying, right, here we are, what should we talk about? So the coaching should always be based upon what have we agreed in the past. We might have talked about this. We might have got together expressly to clarify what it will be. We might have done it by email. It could have had a lot of structure to it. Whatever form it takes, that there's no surprises when the coaching session kicks off. There is clear and agreed clarity of priority issues to work upon before each session. Also, their specific actions are agreed that ensure application of learning to make sure every coaching contact is a high value experience. So in other words, what's the point of coaching that's more like therapy than a developmental experience? Specific actions should be agreed during the coaching session. It says, now what you're going to do about it, and what can I do to support you doing this? And the reason I emphasize the application of learning is I don't think enough coaches remember, if I can use that term, that this is all about learning, and it's all about the learning that gets put to use that determines whether any coaching session is actually of any value whatsoever. Sounds simple, sounds straightforward. The more clear we are about what we're there to work upon, the more clear about the actions, nothing too dramatic very often, short things, that small steps that lead to bigger value progression. That's what it's all about. So, slide 3, and I'm reading these. The best coaches truly care. They listen with full, uninterrupted attention. They show a rare and authentic interest. That's asking a lot of humans. I'll take those in turn. The best coaches truly care. Does a coach care? How is that shown? It's shown by the attention they show. It's shown by the interest they have. It's shown by the way they can explore and dig and sometimes put up with stuff that isn't of direct relevance or always fascinating to them. Let's be straight about this. But nonetheless, they can maintain an true and authentic interest in the people they're working with. That's not in the gift of all. This means saying very little, and at best only when invited by the client. I've done work here in the past on YouTube and my audio channel around coaching in a thinking environment. That's about coaching in a thinking environment. Saying very little, at best only when invited by the client. Not every coaching situation lends itself to a thoroughly and authentically thinking environment contact. Sometimes the coach has to say more than they would otherwise do. The best coaching for me is always when I just keep stum. Let the client find their own space and their own thoughts and ideas, and recognize that whatever I say very often is not of the value I believe it to be. Questions show genuine interest in the client, encouraging a deeper, broader thinking, never unhelpful overthinking. So in other words, questions are not all about being clever. Oh, let me ask you this amazingly insightful question, which will lead you towards what I want to talk about next. That isn't what coaching's about. Coaching is about the client leading the process, not the coach showing how clever they are. The way that a coach can show how clever they are is by saying as little as possible and by showing interest, by asking questions that encourage deeper, broader thinking. None of this is rocket science. So my next slide says, only the very best coaches can explore insightfully without being intrusive. Some people in a being coached capacity are unfamiliar with an interest, which is authentic, genuine, sincere, causing questions to be asked of them and issues to be explored that they haven't gone near, maybe intentionally for some time. So only the best coaches can explore insightfully without being intrusive. It is easy to be insensitive unintentionally. Oh, I didn't know I'd get that reaction for what I just said. So a degree of sensitivity, being perceptive is important. Nonetheless, the best coaches do explore insightfully. What do you mean by that? I'd like to know more about why you feel that way. Can you think of something which demonstrates what you're talking about there? The things that say, I want to know more about this, not what I think we should work on. It's a hard-learned skill to prompt the client to lead on issues of significance, the point that they gain insights and get closer to the outcomes they seek. It's they, the client, the client, the client. It's all about the client. It's all about the skill of leading them almost imperceptibly, if leading is the right question at all. It's allowing them to lead themselves towards their own solutions to their own issues. So the best coaches encourage and support. They're two different things. They take time to genuinely understand client context, circumstances, concerns, and expectations. Those are four, and there's many other variables. Those are four big ones. So the best coaches, I think, are people who don't just presume things. They ask questions. They seek answers themselves to understand best the context, circumstances, concerns, and expectations of the client in as narrow or as broad a sense as possible. It could be about something that's happening this week. It could be about their whole career and their life, for instance. So the best coaches don't just see this as a contact in isolation, a discrete transactional contact. They see it as a point in time that a person they're interested in is experiencing in a wider context. So the best coaches also suspend judgment. It's to be expected that values, opinions, and beliefs contrast and conflict with those of a coaching client. It's not a problem. I work with people and have done for 40 years who don't share my views, my opinions about all sorts of things. That's got to be okay, because it isn't all about only working with people who agree with everything that you think is important. On the contrary, I think it's about broadening your perspectives and horizons as a coach by having contact with people who challenge you in those, at least within yourself. And what I'm trying to say here is, so don't judge people just because they're different to you. Don't judge people just because you think they're wrong or they're misguided, for instance. Put that to one side. You're working with a flawed human being just like yourself, and help them as best you can, irrespective of how aligned or otherwise they are with your own views. So the best coaches believe that those they work with know and can do more than they think and have shown. Again, lots behind all of these. So the best coaches have either an intuitive or an explicit view that people are inherently talented and have potential that has not yet been shown. And if you don't believe that, you shouldn't be being in the role of a coach. If you don't believe that people are more talented than they've had an opportunity to show, then what are you doing there? Because you've got nothing to work on. Everybody has the potential to be better. And I think a good coach is somebody who can get that across to people in an encouraging way. A really good coach knows the parameters of their own abilities and they stay within these. They don't just bump right up to the edge of them and say, that's as far as I can go. Whoops, it wasn't where I thought it was. I know where my parameters of competence are pretty well. And even though I might believe them to be beyond sometimes where I'm currently at, I don't very often go any further than feeling I'm close. As soon as we get up to or beyond what we can cope with and what we can do well, we've overstepped the mark. The best coaches show that challenging, achievable goals bring out the best in people. And that's also about action planning, isn't it? It's about saying, what are you going to find tough, but what is still possible? Silence, in the next slide. Silence is recognized by the best coaches as a precious space in which the client can be a busy thinker. Oh, there's so much around this. It is Nancy Klein inspired. Silence is not an indication that someone stopped thinking because they finished talking. I like the idea that when a client is silent, they're a busy thinker. Only the best coaches recognize this. Only the best coaches can stop themselves filling what they see as a space. It isn't a space. Leave them to think. The calm, relaxed coach provides the client with time to think that is rarely, if ever, found elsewhere. Coaching for a lot of people should be not a lot more than being given the time and space to find answers to things they haven't the time and space to find anywhere else. The client is never interrupted by a really good coach. Most or all of what the coach might have said is parked, remaining unspoken. That's difficult sometimes. I find that difficult. As an ego thing, you like to feel that people recognize your expertise, value your experience, and would benefit from some of what you'd say. More and more these days, I'm thinking I could say this, I'm not going to. It's not going to help at this point. Even though I think this might help, what they're about to come up with can and should be of greater value. The very best coaches are driven by a sincere desire to help others learn and to optimize talents. The very best coaches are, I believe, vocationists. They are people who feel they are doing a worthwhile, beneficial, useful thing called coaching, developing others. They're not just salespeople working on a commodity, selling a service. They are people driven by a sincere desire to help people get better at what they do. I think you can tell one from the other. And only the best coaches model the behaviors they seek in others. Only the best coaches can say, I'm encouraging you to take responsibility for your own learning development with the support of others. This is my approach to doing that. And if you can't show that you take your own medicine, then I think very often those you work with will find you're not as credible as you believe yourself to be. I do hope that was helpful. You'll find a lot more both within my Podbean audio podcast, but also my YouTube channel, my various website presences are out there too. I'm always generating stuff out there. I'm always pleased and interested to hear from people who share my points of view or indeed that oppose them. I like a good argument from time to time. A debate is worthwhile. So I hope that was helpful. There'll be more to come.